A largely unreported footnote in Special Counsel Robert S. Mueller's final report raises immediate questions about the Obama-era FISA warrant obtained to monitor the communications of Carter Page, a tangential advisor to Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Mueller's report explained that his team did not find evidence that can be used to charge anyone from the Trump campaign as acting as an agent of a foreign government. It says the FISA warrant to spy on Page was obtained using a different, and lower, standard of evidence claiming Russian involvement. Mueller's team utilized the standards outlined in the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, which requires persons acting as agents of foreign principals in a political or quasi-political capacity to make periodic public disclosure of their relationship with the foreign principal. The report stated. The investigation did not, however, yield evidence sufficient to sustain any charge that any individual affiliated with the Trump campaign acted as an agent of a foreign principal within the meaning of FARA or, in terms of Section 951, subject to the direction or control of the government of Russia, or any official thereof. In particular, the office did not find evidence likely to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that campaign officials such as Paul Manafort, George Papadopoulos, and Carter Page acted as agents of the Russian government, or at its direction, control, or request during the relevant time period. That paragraph contained a footnote about the FISA warrant to conduct surveillance on Page, which was obtained based on warrant applications that cited as evidence against Page information from the infamous, largely discredited, Clinton-funded anti-Trump dossier. The footnote says the Page FISA warrant was obtained from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, FISC, court utilizing a different, and lower, standard than the one governing Mueller's office. States the footnote. On 4 occasions, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, FISC, issued warrants based on a finding of probable cause to believe that Page was an agent of a foreign power. 50 U.S.C. Sections 1801, B, 1805A, 2A. The FISC's probable cause finding was based on a different, and lower, standard than the one governing the office's decision whether to bring charges against Page, which is whether admissible evidence would likely be sufficient to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Page acted as an agent of the Russian Federation during the period at issue. Cf. United States v. Cardosa, 713 F.3d 656, 660, D.C. Sir. 2013, explaining that probable cause requires only a fair probability, and not certainty, or proof beyond a reasonable doubt, or proof by a preponderance of the evidence. In late October 2016, then FBI Director James Comey signed the first of 3 successful FISA applications to obtain warrants to spy on Page. The second and third were renewal applications since a FISA warrant must be renewed every 90 days. All 3 applications reportedly cited as key evidence against Page the dossier produced by the controversial Fusion GPS firm, which was paid for its anti-Trump work by Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, and the Democratic National Committee via the Perkins Coie law firm. According to Republican House characterizations, the FISA applications signed by Comey withheld key information raising questions about the dossier, including that it was financed by Clinton and the DNC and had known credibility issues. President Donald Trump said Sunday that he will hike the tariffs on $200 billion of imports from China to 25% from 10% on Friday. The trade deal with China continues, but too slowly, as they attempt to renegotiate. No. The president tweeted. The U.S. currently charges a 10% duty on those goods. The U.S. charges a 25% tariff on a $50 basket of mostly high-tech goods made in China. Trump also said that he would soon impose a 25% tariff on an additional $325 billion of Chinese goods that have not yet been subject to the higher duties. Trump's tweets essentially end the so-called trade truce that has been in effect since December, when the president agreed with his Chinese counterpart to hold off on higher tariffs while the two nations negotiated a trade deal. The U.S. has sought a number of reforms from China, including some that demand fundamental changes to the way the Chinese government manages its economy, such as the end of subsidies to Chinese national champions and ending the requirements that U.S. companies partner with Chinese companies when they do business in the Asian nation. Negotiators from both the U.S. and China have been meeting for months, both in Washington, D.C., and Beijing. Recently, officials from both nations have said that the talks are in their final stages. U.S. officials, including the president, have often said that while the talks have been going well, it was still possible a deal would not be struck. Several sticking points have emerged in recent talks, the most recent of which concluded last week in Beijing. China has demanded that the U.S. immediately remove the current tariffs, while U.S. officials have insisted that the tariffs must remain in place while they monitor Chinese reforms. Instead, U.S. officials would strike a deal that would prevent tariffs from going higher. Chinese officials have surprised U.S. negotiators by appearing to backtrack on several points that the U.S. thought had already been agreed to, including steps to crack down on cyber hacking and state subsidies to companies owned partly or wholly by the Chinese government, according to people familiar with the matter. Trump administration officials believe that China's own nationalists have pushed back on some of the terms agreed by its trade negotiators, arguing that they would be humiliating to China and its leader, Xi Jinping. China's nationalists are also pushing back against the basic enforcement mechanism that was proposed by U.S. officials and that several U.S. officials had thought China was close to agreeing to. Under this plan, the U.S. would be able to impose tariffs unilaterally if it found China was not complying with the terms of the deal, and China would not be able to retaliate or file complaints with the World Trade Organization. China's nationalists view this as an unacceptable surrender of Chinese sovereignty. Trump's announcement of the higher tariffs comes at a crucial time, just before what had been billed as a penultimate round of talks between the U.S. and are set to resume Wednesday in Washington, D.C. President Donald Trump said Sunday that Special Counsel Robert Mueller should not testify before Congress regarding his Russia investigation. Trump responded to comments by House Judiciary Committee member, Representative David Cicilline, DRI, that Mueller was tentatively scheduled to testify on May 15 about his report on potential collusion with Russia and obstruction of justice by the president and his campaign during the 2016 presidential election. Why would the Democrats in Congress now need Robert Mueller to testify? Are they looking for a do because they hated seeing the strong no collusion conclusion? Trump said, referring to Mueller's report. Bob Mueller should not testify. No records for the Dems! Appearing on Fox News Sunday, Cicilline said the Judiciary Committee had set May 15 as a tentative date to meet with Mueller and that the American people have a right to hear directly from him, but there was not an absolute guarantee. The White House has so far indicated they would not interfere with Mr. Mueller's attempts to testify. We hope that won't change, he said. Cicilline later clarified his comments on Twitter, stating that no date had officially been agreed to. We are aiming to bring Mueller in on the 15th, but nothing has been agreed to yet, he wrote. That's the date the committee has proposed and we hope the special counsel will agree to it. Sunday on CBS's Face the Nation, Representative Eric Swallwell, DCA, argued that impeaching President Donald Trump may be the only road to save the country. Partial transcript as follows. Margaret Brennan, this, along with other investigations, the administration is pushing back on. Given the level of pushback, do you think that this is stirring up enough frustration among Democrats that they might change the judgment and go ahead with impeachment? Did you support impeachment of the president? Swallwell, this president is taking us down that road. It may be the only road to save the country, but right now, I'll tell you with the Attorney General, I think we should move to impeach him first. Now, I'm a father of a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. We're going through the terrible twos. When my son misbehaves, we take a toy away. We know if we don't do that he's only going to get worse. We have a really bad kid at the White House, and unless we start showing that there are consequences for their actions, he's only going to get worse, and the next kid, the next president, is going to look at what we did now and judge their actions based on whether there were consequences or not. So we have to start taking this president seriously and speaking the only language they know, which is force and consequence.